If you've been here a while, or you've seen any of my other idioms videos, you will know I have a love-hate relationship with idioms. As an English teacher, especially a more intermediate to advanced English teacher, I often have people ask me about idioms or find that what they struggle with is when their native English colleagues speak together, they use a lot of idioms, and then the non-native speaker feels I don't have this vocabulary, I don't know what this means. The reason I have a love-hate relationship with idioms is because I think they can be quite fun to learn. They're quite interesting to know the origin, where they come from, why they are used by English people. But the hate side of it is I think idioms can cause miscommunication or intentionally exclude certain members of your team. If you're in a boardroom and everybody is a native English speaker and they start using idioms or inside jokes that you don't know, you immediately feel like an outsider. You immediately feel either that you don't belong there or that your English is not good enough to understand. But that is not the case at all. Your English is good enough, but the thing is, idioms have a very different meaning to what they sound like they might mean. They are metaphors. They represent something else. However, that being said, it's important for you to know some of the most common idioms used in business situations. These are 10 idioms that I believe you will probably come across at some point, and it is important to know what they might mean, or maybe not important, but I want you to know what they mean just so that you don't feel that your vocabulary is lacking or that you're not clever enough, smart enough, good enough to be in that room. Hi, my name is Catherine. I'm a business English teacher. I work with intermediate to advanced level students. And I post 2 to 3 videos a week. If you are working with English, you want to work with English, or you just want to sound more fluent when you're talking, definitely subscribe and hopefully you find some good content on my channel. Our first idiom today is followed suit. Followed suit. Or to follow suit, to follow suit. Now, to follow suit actually comes from playing cards. So when you follow suit in a card game, it means to follow the suit on the card. The suit is the diamond, the heart, the club, or the spade. And if I play a spade and say follow suit, what I am asking you to do is also play a spade. So follow suit means to follow everyone else, follow the pattern. Do as I do as your colleagues do. A nice way to remember this one is think of a group of business people going into a building. They're all wearing suits, they're all following each other into the building. They are following the pattern. How can we use this in a business situation? Well, it just means that someone or an organization is following the pattern. So for example, during COVID, the company asked its employees to work from home, and many other organizations followed suit. They also asked their employees to work from home. They followed this pattern, they followed this trend. When I discovered a more efficient project management tool, I showed it to my colleagues and they followed suit, also engaging with this new product management tool. So again, they followed me, they copied me, they followed the pattern or the trend. What about if you use it as a question? Well, let's say, for example, client A has decided to spend more money than allocated with us. I wonder if the other clients will follow suit, or will the other clients follow suit? Again, will they follow this pattern? The last straw. The last straw. Now, the origin of this idiom comes from the longer version, which is the last straw that broke the camel's back. This is not used really at all. But what it means is if you're putting weight on a camel, straw by straw, bit by bit, eventually it's going to be too heavy for the camel. So the last piece that you put on before it's too heavy for the camel and it cannot walk anymore, it cannot work anymore. We have shortened it to the last straw, and again it means the same. It means you've taken on too much, this is the final thing, you can't take any more. Now typically this is used by someone that is upset or angry or can't take any more, has had enough. The company had been struggling for years, and unfortunately the economic crisis proved to be the last straw, leading to its closure. After enduring a series of disappointing relationships, the failure of her marriage proved to be the last straw, and she decided to focus on herself instead of looking for a partner. So as you can feel with both of these examples, something happens and it changes your opinion, it changes your perspective. So in the last example, she put up with lots of relationships, she was trying very hard, but one final thing happened and she decided to not try anymore, to do something else instead. If you have children and you're really tired and they're running around and making lots of noise, you might say, this is the last straw. If you continue to misbehave, I will send you to your grandmother, or you won't eat chocolate after dinner, or whatever it is, however you deal with misbehaving children. The last straw is the last thing before you decide, that's enough, I can't take it anymore. Now, there are arguments about how this idiom came to be, its origin. Some people say it was a previous king of England that created it. Other people say it is related to addiction. I'm not 100% sure where it comes from, but driving me up the wall in both cases, with the king and with addiction, states that someone is so annoying or something is so annoying that it's pushing you to drive upwards. Now, of course, driving upwards is nearly impossible and requires a lot of power and a lot of strength. So the idea is you are so angry, so irritated, so annoyed that you find this power to drive upwards. And this can be used in casual situations as well as business situations. You would just say, this new client is driving me up the wall. They cannot make a decision on what they want. Meaning I'm very annoyed, frustrated. I can't make a decision between the two companies that offered me a position. It's really driving me up the wall. They're both fantastic. I don't know which one to choose. So a positive situation, but the process of making that decision is driving you up the wall, is making you irritated. I actually had this happen to me once. I was offered a job that was very good for me. It was a positive move forward, but the interview was really bad. And the people that interviewed me were really unprofessional. This gave me a very uneasy feeling. I felt like I didn't want to accept the job, but it was a good move forwards. The decision was driving me up the wall. I couldn't sleep at night. And in the end, I decided, okay, take the job, see what happens. And funnily enough, 3 months later, I left because I was right. These were very unprofessional, very immature people, and I didn't enjoy working with them. Not the end of the world. Now, I think you can feel the meaning of this one. It doesn't really have an origin, because what you're saying is the world is not ending. It's not the end of the world. But the way we use this is when something difficult has happened, a tough situation that you're not really sure how to deal with. But you can say it's not the end of the world. It's not that bad. We can figure it out. For example, your boss calls a meeting on Monday morning because over the weekend, the company received some very bad feedback and it's affecting your sales. The boss may say, this is something we're worried about, but it's not the end of the world. We can improve our reputation. We can convince people that this was a one-time thing. Or maybe you're working with a colleague that's really struggling to get through to a client and they come to you and they say, I'm just so stressed out, I can't focus. You might say, don't worry, it's not the end of the world, we can fix this. Now, one thing to note about this idiom is if someone's really upset about something, you probably shouldn't tell them it's not the end of the world because it can come off as you don't care. So I'll give you an example. I go to my dad and I say, my tomato plant just died. I'm so upset. I was really looking forward to eating those tomatoes. And he says to me, oh, it's not the end of the world. I might feel a bit hurt because yes, I know it's not the end of the world, but to me, that tomato plant meant a lot and I was excited about it. So be careful when you use this that you're not making someone else feel like their feelings don't matter, or you're saying your issue isn't important, don't come and tell me about it. General rule of thumb. Now, this is a really interesting one because in British history, English history, a lot of different areas of manufacture or practical labor were measured by your thumb. Something was measured by the width or length of your thumb. It's the same as a foot. I'm not sure if you're aware of foot, but sometimes in England, things are measured by a foot. 2 foot, 6 foot, 10 foot, and it is literally how many feet it takes for the length of that item. So I want 10 foot of rope. It's 10 feet of rope. So the general rule of thumb now, of course, we do not measure things with our thumbs, but it refers to a practical or approximate way of doing something. So the general rule of thumb in our business is we take the client's email address and we contact them in no more than 2 weeks later. So meaning the general thing we do, the general idea, the general rule in our business is we take the contact email address and you don't wait more than 2 weeks to email them, to contact them. Or maybe you've just started a new job and they're training you and they will say, in the training pack it says, don't wait more than 10 days. But general rule of thumb in the office is 2 weeks. So the more practical, the more approximate way that we do things is 2 weeks. I'm going to use the tomato plant example that I used earlier. My tomato plant has died and I'm really upset, and I go to my dad, and my dad will say, general rule of thumb with tomato plants is keep them in the sunshine and water them twice a week. So the practical, the approximate way of doing it, it's not the definite way, but it's what most people do if they want a successful outcome. A lot on my plate. Now imagine you go to a buffet, and at the buffet there's all this beautiful food and you want to try everything, and you pile it up on your plate and you carry your plate precariously back to your table and you sit down and you think, oh my gosh, I've taken too much food. I don't know where to start. I don't even have space to look at the food or move the food around on my plate. It's completely full. This expression, a lot on my plate, describes this feeling, but not about food. It's metaphorical. So for example, someone comes to me and says, could you come and give some free English lessons at the local school? And I say, I'm so sorry, I have a lot on my plate at the moment, but contact me again in a month and I will. Meaning there's too much going on. I don't have any space. I don't have any time to do what you're asking of me. Maybe at work, your team lead comes to you and says, could you take on this new project? A polite way to say no would be, I have a lot on my plate at the moment, but leave it on my desk and I will see if I can look at it by the end of the day. It just means I'm really busy. I have no time, no space, no energy to take on anything else. Call it a day. Now, I'm not 100% sure of the origin of this because when you look online, there's lots of different suggestions of the origin. But one origin that I know that I think sounds quite likely is related to sailors. And I have a video on the amount of phrases that English speakers use that come from sailing. England has a very nautical background. We were sailors, we were explorers, we owned a lot of boats and ports. We also stole a lot of boats, but that's a story for a different video. So when sailors wanted to indicate that it was the end of a day, they would ring a bell. They would ring the bell to demonstrate, we've finished, we can rest, we can eat, we can enjoy our time. This was calling the end of the day. So to call it a day is exactly as the phrase suggests. You're saying, that's it, that's the end of my day, I've finished. This can be used in situations where maybe you're going backwards and forwards with a colleague and you're not getting anywhere, or a client and you can't decide on what to do next. You can say, let's call it a day and come back tomorrow. Or let's call it a day and circle back to this later. Let's call it a day and I will contact my team lead and see if they have any suggestions. It's saying that's enough for today. Let's go home, refresh, eat some food, do our hobbies, do some sports, and maybe tomorrow we have some new ideas, some fresh ideas. Cave in. Now there are two meanings for cave in. There's the physical meaning of cave in and there's the metaphorical one, which of course is the idiom. So the physical meaning of cave in is when a mine collapses, it caves in. You can't get out because all the stones have fallen down and you can't move, you're stuck inside. The metaphorical meaning of this is kind of similar. You have walls up. You don't want to do something. These are your boundaries. You're saying, no, I don't want to do it. But eventually, your walls cave in, they come down, and you say, okay, sure, I'll do it. It's to change your mind, to come around to the other person's point of view, to change your opinion. For example, I am an architect and I am working with a client who only wants to spend 100,000 on building a new home. But I know that for 120,000, their home could be so much nicer, so much bigger, so much more modern. But they are very firm in saying, I don't want to spend the extra 20,000. I'm not interested. My budget is 100,000. And I keep talking to them, keep explaining to them, keep showing them different outcomes, different houses I've done in the past for the same amount, 120,000. And I say, after much conversation, my client eventually caved in and agreed to the budget being 120,000. Now, as you can feel from this example, it's not necessarily a positive thing. It's positive for the architect, but for the client, it's not so positive because they've been pushed to do something that they didn't want to do. It would be the same if my friend told me they didn't want to go to the cinema on Friday, and I asked and asked and asked, and eventually I said they caved in. It's good for me, but it's not necessarily good for my friend. However, it could also be used in a positive way depending what you're trying to convince the other person to do. So, in my next example, despite their initial resistance, the company eventually caved in and agreed to revise their sustainability strategy. So in this example, I'm trying to convince them to be more eco-friendly, more sustainable, and they keep saying no, but eventually they cave in. Or, after weeks of negotiation, the supplier eventually caved in and agreed to lower their prices. Positive for me, not so positive for the supplier. So although you can find positive situations to use this in, just be aware that it's usually not so positive for the person that is caving in or the business that is caving in. From the ground up. Now, this one doesn't have such an exciting origin as some of the other ones we've gone through today. It literally just means when you build something, you start at the bottom. So when you build a new house, you don't start at the top because the house would never stand up. You start at the bottom and you build the way up. You build from the ground up. But you can now use this about anything. I built my business from the ground up. Of course, you weren't physically building it, but you started the website. You came up with the idea. You did everything and started from nothing. I am currently working on a new website where my students can book individual lessons, group classes, or self-study courses. I'm hoping it will be available at the beginning of next year, and you can also book any courses or group lessons or even individual lessons if you want through my website. At the moment, it's still in its initial phase. So I might say next year when it's finished, I built this website or this business from the ground up. I created it from the start. When I first opened the website, it was a white page. It is now not a white page. And the last one for today, if there's any that I think you should remember, it's this one, to set the record straight. Some people may say put the record straight, but I personally don't think that's correct. It's to set something straight, set the record straight. And I couldn't find the origin 100%, but I'm sure that this comes from old vinyl records. So when it's not straight, it doesn't play correctly, it scratches, it makes a lot of noise. But when you place it straight correctly, the record sounds beautiful, you hear a lot of good music. And if it starts making those scratchy noises, you would say, can you set the record straight? So I believe this is the origin, but again, I'm not 100% sure. I couldn't find anywhere any believable origins of this phrase. So to set the record straight suggests that something has been said or printed or published about you or the business that is not correct or is not true. And you want to make sure that the truth is out there, that people don't believe this false information, but they believe the true information. So as an individual, you may say, let me set the record straight. The accusations made against me are completely untrue. It's a way to kind of resolve something. Or in a more business situation, if you're representing a company. Let's say, for example, your client is really unhappy with the product they received, but actually, when you read back, the client didn't give a clear enough brief. You met their brief, you did everything they asked for, but they kept asking for more. So you might say, we want to set the record straight, or let us set the record straight. We have achieved everything you requested in your initial brief. These extra things you're asking for cost more or will take more time. Or maybe there's news that the company is closing down and everyone is losing their jobs. And the manager might say, we want to set the record straight. Your jobs are secure. Your jobs are safe. We are not closing down. So it's to confirm misinformation or misunderstandings, to set the record straight. Let me know below which of those was your favorite idiom. Have you used any of these before? Have you heard them being used before? Definitely go and check out my other idiom videos if you do like idioms. Let me set the record straight. There is nothing wrong with wanting to use idioms. I just think as a native speaker, you should be aware that there are non-native people in your meeting, in your office, and you need to be very aware of the language you use to make those people feel included and like they should be there, like they want to be there. Thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate your support. Share it with a friend. I want to be at 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I think it's possible. Maybe. I'm not sure. So share this with a friend if you liked it, if you learned something, or if you hated it, share it with a friend and tell them how much you hated it. I will see you next time. Have a fantastic day and a fantastic week. Goodbye.